Patchwork Cables. They have the finest cables available and they're handmade. Don't forget to use the discount code asterisk for a 10% discount.
And welcome to Saturday Sound Design. So today I wanted to kind of just walk you through some of the things that I've been working on here lately, which has been kind of a bunch of things. I realized that, it's not for everybody to be working on so many things at once, but that's just how I roll. I've been really trying to keep myself busy with learning new things and really trying to improve my own skill set. So my focus has been on layers and developing more melodic and chord structured songs. A lot of the songs that I've created, while they're very minimalistic, they sound great, but I wanted to have some more complexity, not necessarily so complex that it can't be used for regular musical purposes, but I was more interested in like creating stuff that has more dynamics in it, and just kind of getting back to those musical roots that we all grew up kind of listening to, making things sound more musical. So what I've been doing is digging through my plugins and trying to come up with and use different sounds that I haven't used before. And yes, I am a plugin hog, but it does have a purpose. I don't use them all concurrently at the same time, and sometimes depending on what I'm trying to use things for, I find myself navigating towards different things. So let's just go ahead and get started, and I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about. So the DX7, the Yamaha DX7 is a staple of 80s music. The DX7 was like one of the first synths that actually was truly kind of platform for FM synthesis. So I wanted to dig into that, and I wanted to kind of use it for the platform for my chords for this song. I'm using a piano patch, but in also using the piano patch, I wanted to really alter it a little bit. So I added output thermal, and output thermal again it's really more than just a distortion plugin. It really is a very unique type of plugin. I've been using it quite a bit here lately, and I find myself gravitating more towards it than my favorite, which is FabFilter's Saturn II. And it's really funny, but also my other favorite for sound design is also the Unfiltered Audio Spec Ops. Also that other layered plugins from Unfiltered Audio. Let me just show you what I'm talking about. So normally when I'm thinking about sound design, some of my go-tos have always been the Unfiltered Audio stuff, because it's pretty diverse from a sound design perspective. These are the plugins that I've been really experimenting with quite a bit. I love the Spec Ops because of its flexibility and the ability to be able to alter and modulate things. A lot of the patches are specifically designed towards altering things from a frequencies perspective as well as imaging. So I find myself gravitating towards it more. Also, the other one I like using is the Biome. Biome is very similar, but it's more modular in the way that it is designed. It allows you to be able to drag in different types of modules like LFOs and those types of things to be able to combine to create a single patch. And I find it pretty flexible as well. But since Output came out with thermal, I have been putting thermal on some everything. And I've I had really good experience with it from a sound design perspective, and I'm loving it. So, and again, I don't work for output. I'm very appreciative of this plugin, though. It's awesome. It's been really nice to be able to have an extra tool in the toolbox to be able to make changes to things. So let's just kind of listen to how it sounds with this DX7 that I pulled. This DX7 is an iteration that was ported by Arturia, and it's part of the Arturia 7 collection. So if you're interested in purchasing. Okay, let me remove the thermal. So see how much of a difference that makes? So, I mean, thermal is very interesting. So it adds like a chorused kind of grimy effect. So also it kind of gives it a Rhodesy kind of feel, which is really, it was what I was kind of after. I wanted a different kind of sound, not necessarily pulling from a Rhodes, which I have access to, and I use Spectrasonics Key Scape for a lot of those authentic or organic sounding instruments. I have to get away from saying realistic, because it's not necessarily realistic if it's sampled. I'm trying to change my language with that. It's organic, but very organic sounding instrument. So I didn't want something super organic with it. I wanted something experimental sounding. So that was my choice of using both of those together. Also got a FabFilter Pro Q3 in there, doing just a low cut cutoff. I'm going to start just experimenting more with using Ableton's plugin, so that I can reduce some of the overall resource load, which in my case, I'm normally not that concerned about it. Their plugins, which come with Ableton, are just as good as the other plugins that I've purchased. But I love FabFilter Pro Q3 because of its ability to be able to really visually see the spectrum from low to high, and being able to really dig in there and actually pinpoint a specific position within the frequency spectrum to change. So that's why I use it so much. Also, it's a very transparent sounding EQ. It doesn't add a lot of extra junk garbage to your overall sound. And it allows you to be able to really pinpoint and sharp and fine-tunely change things from a frequency perspective. The next instrument, let's talk about guitar. So I have been really digging into guitar. Unfortunately, I'm not skilled enough yet to be able to play the things that I want to that I'm hearing in my head from a sound perspective. But I am working on it, and I'm going to start recording myself more and really just delving into my playing style with my recordings. It just takes time, just like anything new. I've done a couple of different tracks in the past where I've done some strumming, basic stuff that wasn't too bad. But from a sound design perspective, I need to get a lot more advanced because the things that I want to do from a skill perspective, I'm not quite at that level yet. But until I get to that level, there are lots of tools out there that can help to get the same type of sound that I'm after. So I've been really using Evolution Songwriter, which is by Orange Tree Samples. Orange Tree Samples is a Contact Library exclusive only company. So they create a lot of very authentic, organic sounding guitar sample packs. So I use them quite a bit for reproducing the guitar. So I have two of their packs, the Evolution Strawberry and the Songwriter. Songwriter is more of an acoustic kind of Martin guitar sounding implementation of Contact Library, and Evolution Strawberry is an implementation of a bunch of electric guitars that have been sampled using different guitar pedals and tones. So from a range of instrumentation and things that you can get from both of these together, you can pretty much cover any type of music, from rock, pop, whatever, jazz. You could pretty much do it with these two plugins. So, or these two contact libraries rather. So with this one, I'm using the Songwriter, and I'm using a patch called Organic Counterpoint. The great thing about these contact libraries is that they've sampled the guitars in a way that's more realistic sounding to your ear. The noise that the fingers make on the fretboards, the strings, how they sound when they're being plucked, the sound of the overall guitar from a vibrational perspective is what you hear when you're manipulating these sounds. So you have lots of ways that you can articulate the sound to make it sound more realistic. So with this one, I just paired it with a Native Instruments Replica XT, which has turned out to be a very nice plugin that's part of the Native Instruments complete collection. I had never used it up until recently. Under normal circumstances or prior to my using it now, I was using Sound Toys for a lot of the echo type effects, delay effects, chorused sounding effects. But this thing is very good at its implementation of reverbs. I'm not a reverb fan, and I think I've said that if you've not watched my channel before. I'm not a real big fan of reverb because it sounds like a lot of white noise to me. And that's just what it sounds like to my ears. Reproduced white noise, which is very yucky sounding to me. But this and how they implemented it doesn't sound that way to me. It sounds more like a reverbed room, which is what most of the reverbs are supposed to sound like. And sometimes they can sound like bad rooms to me. I mean, let's just put it out there. I don't understand why people would want to record inside of a bad room, but I guess it depends on what type of music you're going after. Because, I mean, I can see a lot of people wanting to do that for different styles of music. So, but again, I'm not a fan of it, but this plugin has changed my mind about it, and I've been using it a lot. So I paired it using a phaser plugin, or a phaser patch, sorry. And this is what I'm doing with that. So it gives it like a kind of an airy, kind of vibrational, kind of vibrato kind of a sound. So overall, when I paired all of this together, it gives me like this really laid back, kind of chill on a Sunday kind of sound. And I think that's really what I was kind of after. I wanted it to be like a kind of chilled, after the party's over kind of sound. You're chilling in the lounge kind of deal. That's what I was really after with this. So I have that guitar in there. So I found also I paired a bell in there for top layer. And I'm also using thermal with that, believe it or not. Thermal, again, has become kind of my best friend here lately. And that dreamy lo-fi piano patch is... Oh, sorry. That dreamy lo-fi piano patch has become like my best buddy. So I've been really using it quite a bit. Because I really like the way that it sounds on things, and this is what it's doing on this particular sound. Let me turn it off. And that's what it's on. So it gives it like a little bit of a gain level increase, but it also adds like a little bit of distortion to it, and just a touch of distortion, not an over amount of distortion, but just enough to kind of add a little bit of harmonics to the bells. So that was the reason why I kept it on that. I'm also using, and I don't remember if I'm still using Arcade. Let's see, what am I using Arcade for on this one? Sunno. I think I was experimenting with adding some vocals, but I opted to not do it. And let me see, is that in the final mix? Let me see here. Yeah, see, I opted not to go with it in the final mix. I thought it sounded fine just without it. So I actually just kept it in there, but I could actually delete this track out. So I have a basic kick, a basic snare. I have another layered snare to change up the way the drums sound in the verses. I have a top layer perk sound running through it. I've also got a sublab, and sublab has been my top priority here lately because I've been sound designing with it on a major in a major way. Really honing in and trying to perfect the way that my basses sound, my subs sound. To me, subs are more like basses, but used in a way that are kind of accentuate the drums nowadays. Back in the day, we used to use just basic bass sounds for that bottom end to accentuate the drums, but now we're just using subs for that. And I have like really become friends with this thing so that I can make my basses sound better. Also been experimenting a lot with patterning and making things sound a little bit more advanced and a little bit more complex. Also experimenting with getting those modulated I can't think of the term for them. The pitched wheeled modulation sounds that you hear in subs nowadays. I've been experimenting with that and really just overall working on my bass sounds, my sub sounds. So with that, I didn't do anything to it other than I did add a thermal. The thermal on this gives it a little bit more harmonics. Let me just show you what I'm talking about. It's very, I don't know if you're going to be able to hear it. I'm going to have the song played in this one after I finish this. We're almost there. So let me just let you listen to what this sounds like. Okay, that's with thermal. This is without. With. Okay, so again, it adds a little bit of harmonics to it, which actually makes it sound a little bit dirtier to my ear, which is what I was looking for. I needed it to be just a little bit more dirty and not have that as much that top end resolution that was happening that the patch that I'm using has. The patch that I'm using is one of the patches that I've been working on for my pack. And what I've been finding is that these patches that I'm creating are like really good staples to like have as starters. There's good starter sounds. Like if I'm creating something I need a sub, I'll go into my pack, pull one of these sounds, and then I'll start tweaking it to kind of get me where I'm trying to go. So I'm really happy about that. That I'm able to actually use the sounds that I've sampled or the sounds that I've created from my pack, and I'm really liking that. And as I continue to develop this pack, I'm going to be releasing this stuff. It's going to be free, and I'm hoping that you guys will be able to use it as well. So that's what's happening with that. I did add an Omnisphere to this. Omnisphere, again, is a staple. If you're looking for something that's a versatile VST that has a lot of really good sounds, Omnisphere is a go-to, which is why you see a lot of producers using it. It is an expensive plugin to get into, but it's definitely well worth the money because of the amount of things that they offer in the plugin. In this plugin, it's because I have Key Scape, it naturally pairs in Key Scape with it. So I'm using the LA Custom C7 Grand Piano. So in essence, I'm kind of just using Key Scape for this one, and I don't have it paired with anything extra. I think as I was experimenting with finding different sounds, I ended up just going with the Key Scape Grand Piano, which is why I'm using Omnisphere. So with that, I added an Endless Smile. Endless Smile, made by Dada, has been a really interesting plugin for me as well. It is one of those plugins. It's kind of a weird plugin to begin with. It adds like kind of a compressed kind of open-ended airy sound to me. Almost like a reverb, but not quite. But it gives piano sounds like this added kind of extra roomy kind of airy dimension to me, which is why I use it so much with piano sounds. Outside of that, I've been using, again, I've got a FabFilter Pro Q3 doing a low cutoff on it, just so that I can, I'm keeping all of the top end instruments out of the sub range so that the sub range can just live in the lower 200 hertz range. Nothing else needs to really live there. That's the reason why I do the low cutoffs. You have to kind of be careful with the low cutoffs. I don't do it on my master. I let my master stay in its normal frequency spectrum. And I don't modify it there because it can cause phasing. And you don't want it that. It can add some extra junk sounds that you don't want and make your mix sound flat. So I leave my master EQ in regular frequency settings, and again I use a FabFilter Pro Q because it is a very dynamic EQ. I've also am using Ableton's accurate grid. It's an accurate spectrometer. It allows you to be able to see the frequency range of the overall mix while things are happening, so that I can kind of see if I've got something too loud or if my sub is out of control, that kind of stuff. That's the reason why I have this open all the time. And again, the other thing that I use now is Luna. Yeah, I am still using Luna. It's my Luna path was for real. I use Luna every day. It's always open. And I use it for the Neve summing, also for the instrumentation, for all of my external gear, plus the microphone is there. I also still have the tape. It's always on. I don't really change the settings too much of both of these. They add really extra. The Studer, it adds saturation, which sounds, depending on how I have the settings set, it adds like a level of noise in there, which adds harmonics. like tape harmonic sound, which gives you like an element of analog kind of feel for the overall mix. And the Neve summing, that thing, be it pricey as it is an amazing plugin because it adds like a top end kind of sheen, kind of a sparkle to the overall mix, which is why I paired them together and use them that way. I still use the S1. I double check and make sure that my imaging is not too wide, or it's not too flat. I like it to be kind of just right in the middle, like it is there. And I am definitely still a big fan of the Izotope Tonal Balance Control 2. This thing has been a definite lifesaver for me because I was having problems with my mix before this thing and trying to get things to sound right. But when I started using this, now I don't have to futz around with my mixes too much. If I know I have my mix sounding right, the mastering goes well. I can just use the Izotope 9 master plugin, bring in my overall track from there, and do the analytics on it using their analytics mastering tool. I'll let it even out the EQ and then make some minor tweaks to it. I normally don't use any of the extra stuff unless it's some specific sound that I'm going after. I'd rather kind of tackle that in the mix rather than doing something like that in the mastering level, the mastering phase. The mastering phase is really about overall volume of the overall track. All of the groundwork and the things that really make a song sound like a song are done in the mix level. So I try not to do super duper changes at the mastering phase. I do small tweaks to the EQ just to kind of sweeten things up a little bit, or dampen things down some depending on how they are. Otherwise, I'll go back to the original mix and then change them there, then bring it back into the mastering phase and fix it there. So that is what I've been doing. And that's been working out. My mixing has started sounding 100% better. I'm like really, really happy with that. When I listen to my stuff now on headphones, earbuds, in the car, through my bookshelf speakers, the mix sounds just like I expect it to sound. Versus in the past when my mixes were like, I was crying because it just didn't make sense how things were sounding. You know, you spend hours tweaking stuff and thinking that you got it right, and then you listen to it on earphones and you're like going, what the hell is this? The bass is not sounding right. The things are not panning or not panned. They're all down the middle. You know, those kinds of things. I've really learned a lot from just taking the time out, going through, making some small changes. I don't like EQing my individual tracks unless I absolutely have to. The things I like to focus on is, again, just making sure the spectrum range for the instruments are kind of apart from each other, meaning that I like to make sure that I'm panning them so that they're not stacked on top of each other down the middle. The only time that I've really had to mess with EQing something is if the original is very muddy or it's got too much mid-range. Then I'll have to pull out an EQ and really start going to town on it. I'm going to start digging into getting into more compression and limiting. But, you know, compression and limiting are basically the same thing. They're volume controlled plugins. They control the gain levels of a sound and suppress or compress the way that the sound or the volume of the sound sounds. So it really is, again, it's depending on what you're going after. All those compressors and limiters actually have coloration or added harmonics. added to them based upon how they're designed. If they're designed to mimic some specific piece of analog gear, they are inherently built in with this specific frequency range of noise at the bottom of it, to add to your mix, so, or to add to the overall sound of what you're putting it on. So then you have to tackle the noise of the actual plugin that you're using, and making sure that it doesn't make things sound terrible, versus, you know, trying to use it for what you're trying to use it for. So I'm again still learning. I feel like my level of understanding when and why to use things is really starting to get better. I don't feel like I'm like some super engineer by any means. I still rely on going out to like Dave Pensato's and listening to what he says about different types of plugins and how to use them and when to use them. And now when I watch those videos and he starts talking about different colorations of different things and what they sound like, I can hear them. before before I had the training and gone through the things that I've been through, I didn't understand what he was talking about, the coloration of something. But if you've spent the time to go through and listen to the plugins and add it to something, you too will start to hear what he's talking about. Now when I go back and listen to those videos where he was talking about mixing something specific, I'm learning a whole lot more than I was before, but rather than just sitting there going, what the hell is Dave talking about? That makes absolutely no sense. And you actually have to listen to Dave's videos in your studio with your good set of monitors so that you can actually hear what he's talking about. Just listening to it on like a regular TV or listening to it with regular speakers, you don't really hear what he's talking about. If you're actually watching his videos in your space, you'll hear those nuances that he's talking about, and they start to make a lot more sense. The other person that I've been watching too, or actually two people, has been Help Me Devon. Help Me Devon is a YouTube channel. Gentleman name is Devon, of course, and he is really good. He uses Pro Tools. I really wish some of these guys that are these top level mixing channels would use other DAWs, because you don't, even though Pro Tools has been an industry tool for a very long time, not everybody uses it. Especially nowadays, that a lot of people have gotten away from having to depend on an actual studio to be able to create. I really wish we would get more channels that are using like Ableton, Studio One, those types of things, that are those top level engineers using these products, so that we can, can do more comparison from a DAW perspective. But again, they're all using the same types of plugins, and they're all talking about the same theoretical ideas. So I guess it really doesn't matter what DAW they're using, because I still learn something from them regardless. The other person that I've been watching has been Wavy Wayne. His channel, he's a newer guy, but he's very experienced with really good mixing from trap music, rap music perspective. So I've been watching his videos and really trying to gain more of that kind of knowledge about when to do things. Both of those guys, they actually sell templates. Devon actually sells Ableton templates. I haven't spent time going out on his website to see what he has to offer, but he does offer Ableton templates. And so there are people out there that do have that advanced engineer spectrum of knowledge available. And again, you really have to spend the time yourself and sit down, pull in those plugins, use your ears, because that's all that's going to really matter is from your ears what it sounds like to you. Because all of these plugins, they're all made to do something specific. And yeah, they do sound different and they're designed to sound different. And that's why we have so many. They're not all transparent. All of them are designed based upon they're modeled after some piece of gear. So they all have this underlayment of harmonics built into them. So you have to learn what that underlayment of harmonics is and how to use it in your production. So it's really important that you, again, spend time with your DAW. And I know I keep saying this. I know I was trying to send out a subliminal message in my last video to learn your DAW. It really is important that you learn your DAW. If you don't learn your DAW, you don't really get the full grasp and understanding of what tools you have available to you. Even if you don't have all these plugins that we have, there are a lot of us on that have these YouTube channels that have tons of plugins, and we don't all use them at all. Again, I personally, I can only vouch for myself. I use them based upon what projects I'm working on and what sounds I'm looking for. I don't represent any of these companies. I'm not being paid by any of these companies to show any of the stuff that I'm working on. I don't get paid to work in Ableton. No. So I only use these tools because they're beneficial to me as a musician, producer. These are the tools that I have found that give me an easy way to be able to work. I'm going to play the video and I'll see you on the next one.
Asterix as alien beings.